Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to the NEETwork, the new podcast for all things NEET. I am Theo, and with me, as always, is my friend Dexter.
Hello, everyone.
Normally, right now, we talk about NEET current events, but I can't really think of anything that pertains to NEETs in the news. What about you, Dexter?
I guess we could talk about how some states are starting to open back up, which means more people are able to go out and get back to their day-to-day lives, which for NEETs, that might mean going to the gym again. Really, that's about it for...
I see a bunch of wages going back to their wage jobs.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, they're having to go back to the cages. I never had a break from my wage cage.
No, yeah, me neither. I never ended up having to take any time off of work. I kind of, got quote unquote laid off of the one job and it just immediately found another one because my parents weren't going to let me live free at their place. Had to find a way to keep paying rent.
As it goes.
Yeah, I didn't know the states were opening back up. Yeah, I guess if that's it, we can get right into the meat of the episode. And one of the goals of the NEETwork when I was thinking about this podcast was to help people who are already free from employment live the best and healthiest lifestyle they can. And when people think about living healthy, the first thing that comes to mind is how do you keep a healthy body? You keep in mind that neither of us are really experts at health and fitness, and we're just gonna kind of share the things that have seemed to work for us. If you like what you hear, do some research yourself before embarking on any kind of diet or exercise routine.
Have you ever done a like a sport or anything before, Theo?
Not like an organized sport in high school or anything. I was largely the kind of person who wanted to spend as little time at school as I possibly could, and being part of a sport meant that I would have to spend more time at school practicing the sport. So no, I was not in any kind of sport like that.
I was in swimming from freshman year in high school to sophomore year in college. So I know a little bit about being fit, but it's kind of a very niche form of being fit.
It's definitely different being a swimmer than say when I imagine someone playing a sport, I imagine like sports ball.
Yeah, those really high impact kind of really popular sports.
Right, the ones everyone watches, I guess, quote unquote everyone. And if you're already into fitness, you should find most of this advice to be pretty generic, I think.
Yeah, I mean a lot of it's interchangeable. I can see that. Like there is no perfect routine.
Yeah, there really isn't a perfect routine that fits everyone. A lot of it is pretty simple. I think our culture kind of complicates the subject of health and fitness a lot, mostly to make money.
Of course. But isn't that part of being a neat?
That is part of being a NEET,
Find ways to make extra money.
trying to make some extra cash.
Got to make that bread.
Got to get those chicky tendies.
Well, I guess if we're talking about health and wellness, we should probably start with maybe exercise.
Yes,
How neats should exercise, at least.
right. And depending on what kind of NEET you are, getting proper exercise can be more or less difficult. If you're an outgoing style NEET, access to exercise is as simple as getting a gym membership. And we've talked before about how it seems most outdoor style NEETs already are the gym bro kind of NEETs. So they probably already regularly access exercise.
But the question is that really good exercise, or is it like doing like one really heavy lift and then talking for like 45 minutes, hanging out with the bros, going and eating a cheeseburger afterward?
I mean, if they're jacked, then it's obviously working for them.
Yeah, I guess. The question is being jacked really healthy, or is it just like being able to lift really heavy?
I don't know. I personally, when I exercise, I'm not really doing it to be strong. I'd prefer to do it to look good. Being strong is kind of the bonus to me.
Right. I mean, being strong is good. It's not necessarily a perfect indicator of health. There's plenty of very strong people out there who have all kinds of heart issues and
Yeah.
other health problems.
Mm-hmm. I've definitely seen during my time in the Air Force where 9/10 of all the people were essentially marathon runners, but the most common kind of injury was they all had messed up knees.
Right. That's actually it's interesting that you mentioned that because running is arguably one of the hardest things on your joints that you could do. That's just constant impact right in those knee joints, and it really never goes easy. I mean, you see the videos, those horror videos of like professional runners who just land on their leg wrong and it bends backwards.
It just snaps like a twig. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's rough.
Running, I I've done my fair share of running. Nothing against anyone who runs for a living who enjoys running. It can be a really nice time. I live by the beach. Sometimes I like to run on the beach personally.
Yeah, a little
Uh,
run now and then doesn't
it,
hurt.
it's less impactful that way than it is running on like something hard like asphalt or pavement.
Right.
But in general, what I've seen and what I've heard and what I've done myself, I found that cycling is much less intensive on those on your joints. And that would be something I would recommend looking into if you have joint issues or joint pain while
Right.
running. Cycling might be a good way to get that cardio in while also uh, not hurting yourself as much.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you how you felt about swimming as opposed to running for getting your cardio.
Swimming's tough. It's really tough. And this is me. I did kind of collegiate swimming, which means it was very, very competitive. It wasn't necessarily just to be in shape, it was to be fast and strong as well. I mean, you're using basically every muscle in your body. If you aren't prepared for it, you're going to be hurting. And if you're not doing it almost daily, the next time you swim is rough. You basically take this high intensity, high cardio, high requirement exercise that requires like some good form to do properly. Otherwise, you actually will injure yourself. And you restrict oxygen, which makes a very challenging kind of combination. Overall, for cardio, compared to a lot of my other friends, people who did a lot of running, say they did like soccer or cross country, things like that, I've found that I perform better than them when it comes to catching my breath and kind of keeping that control, even when I'm running roughly similar to them.
Mhm.
Uh, I would say swimming has, when I was in it, really did improve my cardio. It definitely improved my muscle tone. If you want really toned, but not necessarily like huge, bulky muscles, swimming is a really safe bet.
That's interesting. I when I think of like sports injuries, I tend not to think of swimming.
You know, you would think so, but the thing is, you've got your arms going into maybe not necessarily natural positions to push you forward or pull you forward, I guess, in a lot of cases. You might have heard something like an injury called like swimmer's arm or swimmer, I think it's swimmer's shoulder. And basically, it's caused from that over the head reach into like a huge whole arm pull. But if you pull in the wrong direction, you're kind of tweaking your shoulders weird,
Hmm.
and it will cause you all kinds of shoulder problems. I think the same situation can occur with elbows. I know backstroke has its whole other list of like tears and problems there. Um, and actually, swimming, if you're doing backstroke, is one of the easier ways to get a concussion. But that's just because you don't see the wall.
Yeah, if you're swimming at competitive speeds and you slam literally headfirst into that wall, I can't imagine that's comfy.
It's not comfy, and it almost always loses you the race. That's for sure. I would argue that swimming is never comfy. Uh, okay, actually, I take that back. There are very peaceful moments in swimming, but never in competitive swimming.
Right. Well, we're talking about, like, swimming for yourself to get yourself into shape rather than swimming as fast as you possibly can.
I will say when I was in high school swimming, I did breaststroke. And breaststroke has one of the longer underwaters, at least in high school swimming before you learn how to dolphin kick really well. It would be like you'd hear everyone shouting and screaming and, everything going on. You'd jump in the water, you'd go under the surface for like that really long underwater period, and everything would just be like quiet. You'd hear a little bit of the water, and that'd be it. And that is almost like the perfect moment for like meditation. It's incredible. It's just you hear the water flowing, and that's about it. And then you realize, "Oh, crap, I need air," and then it becomes less, peaceful.
Very interesting. I've never heard it described like that.
Yeah, that's my take on it. I really enjoyed that moment.
And I guess, like, bringing it around to running, like, I find running to be really tedious. Even just walking on the treadmill is super boring, even if I have music on. But since swimming kinda requires all your concentration.
I'm not gonna say that it's more challenging. Actually, you know what? Yes, I am. I'm gonna say swimming is more challenging. But when you get good at it, man, it feels good.
My style of going to the gym usually just involves lifting. I'm not one of those guys who lifts retarded amounts of weight. I put a couple plates on and I'll press it a few times, and that tends to be my exercise. But yeah, I mean, even if you're sore, you don't really think of being sore as being comfy, but I do kind of like that sore feeling I have after having a nice heavy workout session.
Yeah, it's really interesting how your body, um, rewards you for, your body rewards you for working out.
There's almost a kind of high score uh feeling, because like when I lift, I'll kind of keep track of how much I'm lifting and how easy it becomes, and when I'm able to lift a heavier weight, I kind of imagine it as like my score is going up. You ever get that feeling?
I get the feeling of, like, accomplishment, I get those endorphins running through me, I'm like, "Man, I've never done something like that before, that's great."
Yeah, accomplishment. That's a less stupid way of saying it.
Yeah, it's like, "Man, I've never swam that fast in my life."
Well,
You
yeah,
know?
for you, it's like, oh, I beat my time.
My last meet of my entire swimming career, I
Mhm.
was at the national championships for junior college in Buffalo, New York. The water was really cold. Everything at this meet was, like, not the best. The water was very cold. The pool was not necessarily the cleanest. We were up against arguably one of the best teams in junior college. In fact, we were, as far as I'm aware, against the best team in junior college. One of them. So a bunch of other teams invited, but really it was between us and them. We ended up getting second place at the meet overall, so that's good. But at that meet, I broke every single one of my personal bests. And that was like the best feeling ever. I remember like on the plane ride home, listening to Ocean Man and just being proud of myself.
Shit, man.
That was the best, man. It's such a good feeling. Another thing about swimming is swimming doesn't build like that heavy lifting strength, but heavy lifting strength is really good for swimming.
Right, because you're pulling your body weight along.
Yeah, you're pulling your body weight, so it's really kind of a calisthenic exercise almost.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's not necessarily the best for building like really heavy lifting muscle.
Yeah, one last thing about uh pool related stuff, I guess. I'm not sure how common it is, at least among NEETs, but if you are obese, doing calisthenic type exercises in a pool, I've heard, is a good way to get started, because you're too heavy to do things like, say, squats or push-ups, but the pool gives you a bit of buoyance for you to actually get started. What do you think about that, Dexter?
So actually, a long time ago, This is going to be a really funny story. It's going to sound really lame. A long time ago, I was a lifeguard and I trained water aerobics.
Okay.
Um, Water aerobics is really popular among middle-aged women
It sure is.
or later-aged women, and typically they are not in the healthiest state.
Mhm.
And I will say they started out pretty rough, but they quickly caught up to a point where they could almost keep up with. It's low impact on the joints, lower impact than anything on land, even walking on land. I would say it's lower impact than that on your joints. I would argue that the water kind of provides a little bit of extra support. And something that a lot of people don't realize, you are sweating a lot when you're swimming. You don't feel it, but you are sweating a ton. A lot of people, when they start to feel a little sweaty, they start to feel a little gross, and that's it. They would kind of want to drop it.
Yeah, they feel like because they've broken a sweat, then they've achieved something, so it's time to go home.
Yeah, there's that, and then there's the people who just they don't like the feeling of sweat, just in general. They just don't like it.
I feel that to some extent. I don't like to feel grimy.
And swimming's a really good way to avoid that feeling. If you can get past the mental block of not being able to breathe, it's a really good place to be.
But speaking of good places to be, for those NEETs who, for some reason or another, would prefer to remain a homebody, getting exercise might be a little more difficult, but you are in luck getting a healthy amount of exercise as opposed to the kind of exercise you might do to lose weight or bulk up is actually kind of easy to do in a small space. You only need like a 6 foot by 6 foot space to do a handful of calisthenic exercises.
I would agree. You'd be surprised how much you can get out of just squats, lunges, jumps, push-ups,
Oh yeah.
pull-ups. Like if you have a pull-up bar, there's a lot you can get out of that. Even jump rope, jumping
Yep.
jacks, everything there's value in it. There's a lot of core exercises that are really valuable that you can do in a small space.
Mhm.
Uh, Luckily, yeah. I mean, just about any dry land workout can be done in a 6 by 6 foot rate like area.
Yes, and if you if there's something you need equipment for, there's quite a few kind of like beginner exercise kits for sale basically at every store that sells sporting equipment, and they can range anywhere from like what, $30 to $50.
Yeah, the beginner stuff, you can get like a decent, like a jump rope, push up bar thing,
Mm,
and a medicine ball, and maybe like a muscle roller for less than $50.
right. And for me, I like what are those things? Resistance bands.
Resistance bands, super cheap
Yeah, real cheap.
and really good for you. I used to use like there are resistance bands that you wrap around your legs and you could do like squats and things like that, like frog squats, wide squats, and that would build out your stabilizer muscles and you get a lot of value out of that. Very cheap. They break fairly easily, of course, because they're basically rubber bands. They eventually wear down.
Right after being stretched, I don't know, 10,000 times or whatever. But, it's part of it is also the convenience of you're kinda getting the sensation of having the weight, but they don't actually weigh anything, so they're easy to put away and, keep organized. You don't have to, like, leave them out or have a huge rack for them. You could basically fold them up and put them in a dresser.
Like you can spend the $500 and get the really nice weight kits and things.
But that's money you could spend on chicky tendies.
Exactly. You could get the treadmill. Those things almost always take up like a whole room.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to have a room dedicated to working out, and that doesn't seem very comfy. What if I want to turn that into my neat nest?
exactly. Well, what if you only have 1 or maybe 2 rooms?
Yeah, I'd rather dedicate my room to my hobbies and just have a drawer dedicated to my workouts, unless my hobby is working out.
I think if your hobby was working out, you'd just get a gym membership though, right?
You're right. But kind of On the topic of being healthy, there's more to being healthy than just working out.
In fact, they say your diet contributes more to your health than any amount of exercise does.
It's true. This going back to being in swimming, we would get done with a long workout and a lot of people would go home and they would drink soft drinks, they would eat sugary foods or like really heavy foods and they stagnated really fast. You could tell who wasn't eating properly.
I find that like when someone wants to lose weight, the very first thing they should do is cut the soda out. Um, they're essentially drinking gallons and gallons and gallons of liquid candy all the time. Hell, I feel guilty when I have like one soda a week because I know just how sugary it is, but I do pretty well.
Yeah. And something to keep in mind is it's not even necessarily the sugar that's bad for you. A
Mhm.
lot of the foods that you eat naturally have a lot of sugars in them. A lot of your fruits will have sugars in them. Quite often, tea has some kind of sugar in it.
Very interesting.
Things like that. It's like the corn syrups.
Oh, your corn syrups, yeah.
The syrups are what's really bad for you.
Mm. I find, I mean, America itself has been kind of struggling with this for the better part of a century, but there's a lot of misinformation out there about what's actually good for you and what isn't. And even things you would think are pretty good for you, like, say, pasta. You know, you take in a plate of spaghetti, you've taken in probably 1,000 calories.
A lot of those calories are actually really bad for you. If you're not doing like high intensity workouts, you're not burning that energy off, so you're just packing it away somewhere else.
Right, you can't burn the calories fast enough. And that's part of why I'm not really into running is on a lot of treadmills, they'll have a little counter that counts the calories you've burned, and it ticks up really slow, and that's not that's ticking up slowly because that's how slowly you're actually burning the calories. So if you burn 200 calories and you go home and eat a plate of pasta, you've immediately undone all that work that you did on the treadmill.
Right. You've gone nowhere, and now you just feel worse for it.
Exactly.
I would say if you're really heavy and you're working out and you don't know why you're still heavy, and this is a little bit controversial, but you really should look at what you're eating, what you're bringing into your body.
And don't BS yourself. Like, most of the time, what I see is, oh, I'm eating salads all the time. I don't know why I'm still so heavy. But look at all the things you're putting on that salad.
Salad dressing is really not good for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The bacon that's added to it really isn't that good for you. If you're going to like a McDonald's and getting one of their salads, there's a lot added to those that's really not healthy. Like I hate the word calorie counting. I hate that concept. And typically it doesn't work that well, but you really do got to look at what you're eating. I've heard a lot of people talk about one of the diets that they do is they look at their caloric density,
Hmm.
how much water is in my food. Eating foods with like more water is like suggested over not. An example I've been given is you have a raisin and a grape. They effectively have the same calorie amount in them because water has no calories, right?
Right.
So it's recommended to eat the grape because it takes up more space in your stomach than the raisins. You could eat a lot more raisins than you can grapes.
Interesting. Is that kind of what they mean when they talk about heavy foods?
I think so. I think that's what they mean. Like your caloric density. Heavy foods are really dense, they're hard to digest. There's just a lot of things about it that make them, subpar. And it doesn't necessarily mean cut all dense foods out of your life forever. It just means moderation. Limit them.
Yeah, exactly. I don't. I would say like if you're trying to lose weight, yes, cut the soda, but I don't avoid soda entirely. I have a soda with fast food every once in a while, and I do fine. I just moderate the amount of junk food that I eat.
Right. There is no perfect strategy. Don't expect results immediately. Don't get disheartened. You got to stick with it. You got to hold yourself to it. And, that weight will come off eventually. I mean, don't give yourself excuses either. Like, yeah, sure there are some people who are going to be naturally a little bit, heavier set.
give yourself at least a year to start seeing results, or to see major results, I would think.
Keep that in mind when you're trying to give yourself a diet. Don't just say to yourself like, "Oh, my body will just never let me lose this weight."
And I think a lot of people just kind of give up, even though they've only been at it for like a month. Have you ever tried like a fad diet or something like that, Dexter?
When I was in college swimming, I talked about dropping things like corn syrups, limiting my unnecessary sugar intake. Actually, my college swimming diet was like I limited it down to like my staples, which were brown rice and eggs.
Right. When I say a fad diet, I kind of mean something more like a diet that becomes trendy for a little while. I remember in high school, the Atkins diet was really big.
I can't say I've ever done one of those.
Okay. I did a couple admittedly fad diets for a while, and I'm not gonna lie, I think I saw results doing them. One was kind of a fad for about a year, and one was more like an eating strategy. The fad diet I tried for a few years, I quite enjoyed, and I think I'd go back to do it if I ever felt like I had a chance to, was called the paleo diet. And I am pretty sure I saw results doing it. And what that is like it's supposed to be a diet that mimics what Paleolithic humans ate. And what that essentially means is no grains or cereals or corn or dairy. So you kind of like cut bread, milk, cheese, and cereal out of your diet. And I wasn't necessarily following this to the letter, but I think I did pretty well at it, at least most of the time. And I don't know whether it was the result of the diet or the result of the exercise I often paired with the diet, but I actually did see what seems to happen for me is I'll lose about 10 to 15 pounds and then I'll start gaining weight, which is, muscle weight. And what would happen is all that money I wasn't spending on milk and cheese and bread, I would spend on meat. And my milk, cheese, and bread fund, I'd buy a big thing of chicken breasts with it.
Yeah, and I would really suggest kind of building a meal plan. Basically, plan out your week's meals, know what you're going to need. If you do that, not only can you save time, but you can kind of find ways to save money and typically plan for a safe, healthy diet for yourself.
Right. I think a lot of eating kind of happens in the moment where you're hungry, if that makes sense.
Right? Something I did a lot in college, and I noticed you did it a fair bit too, but intermittent fasting.
Right. I was about to bring that up. You mentioned creating a strategy for your eating, and that's essentially what intermittent fasting is. It's not exactly a diet, it's a style of eating, and I was doing this with paleo diet because it apparently also mimics how people in the caveman days ate, where if you're a caveman, you might eat once a day if you're really lucky. And how it works is you have a certain window of time during your day where you're allowed to eat, maybe not as much as you want, but eat and remain full. And during another window of your day, you eat nothing except you're allowed to drink water, and some people will drink coffee and tea during that time as well. And typically, those windows are 8 hours of allowed eating, 16 hours of not eating.
I've heard before that eating 2 hours before dinner is a bad idea. Have you ever heard that before? Or eating 2 hours before bedtime.
I've heard both. I've heard, yes, eating before bedtime is bad, but my brother, who actually is much deeper into fitness than I am, says that eating something high in protein is pretty good for you before bedtime. I guess it matters what you eat.
Eating high proteins are typically harder to break down,
Okay,
so they last longer. Maybe not necessarily energy, but you don't get hungry as quick.
right.
There's like a lot of density there.
So maybe you're not as hungry when you wake up?
That might be it,
Okay.
because I've heard eating 2 hours before bedtime, like within that time frame. Basically, when you go to sleep, your metabolism slows way down.
Right, and that's the reasoning I've heard for not eating before bedtime is because you're not doing anything to burn those calories while you're absorbing them. You're just laying down and absorbing.
Yeah, so they're just going straight to storage. You got any other thoughts on that?
Not particularly. But no matter what you tell me, chicky tendies are good for you.
Ah, yes. Tendies, the most important staple for any of the neats.
The food of the gods.
Make sure you're saving up your good boy points.
Save up your good boy points and cook your tendies in the oven. It will take longer, but the result is better. Trust me.
That's true. And if you have chicken breast, fry it.
Yeah, fry it up and finish it in the oven. And don't eat your chicken breast rare.
What if I want to try the carnivore diet?
The carnivore diet. Um, I would assume eating the carnivore diet, you would still cook your meat.
Oh, well, you have very much to learn.
I've I have heard of some people who do eat their meat raw, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little curious, but I don't trust anything at the grocery store raw.
I've heard of people doing it, and I've heard that they all get really sick the first few times they do it, and that they really aren't all that healthy.
Right. Well, I would assume that our digestive systems are so used to eating cooked meat as opposed to raw.
Like I don't know how some people can eat things like tartare. I just don't trust it that much. I'd be worried about things like bacteria or like parasites.
I mean, I eat sushi. I'm not worried about sushi parasites.
Yeah, you're right. I would highly recommend if you can get some eating fresh fish. Don't eat stuff from the market if you can avoid it.
Yeah, the supermarket, for most people, it's the only source of food, but I'm not gonna lie, the supermarket's honestly kind of a bad source of food.
Yeah, kind of going back to that homestead dream, if I could catch my own food, I would.
Right. None of that food is as fresh as the supermarket says it is. Um, one last quick little note. If we may talk about some of the more negative neat stereotypes, I'd say this relates to the subject of health, but would you say some neats are a bit unkempt? Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I would say so. You get your typical image of like your jobless kind of 30-year-old, kind of greasy, pretty heavy.
Right, there's that, I vaguely recall hearing this from some of my friends who play Yu-Gi-Oh, but, it's become common practice for Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments to either require you to bring deodorant or to just outright disqualify players who smell.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know how true it is. I'd have to ask, my friends again, but,
That sounds like a harassment lawsuit waiting to happen.
it could be. I don't think anyone's tried it yet, but I could see that happening.
I mean, I guess yeah, when I think about it, I think of like the con goers. Like when you go to cons, like
Yeah.
Comic Con, for example.
I did meet some,
There are very stinky nerds there.
yeah, I met some of those when I went to Comic-Con for a few years.
You know, it's really not that hard. Take a shower, stay clean.
Yeah, and I know, like, I kinda get it. If you spend most of your time in your room not talking to people face to face, there's not a lot of reason to make yourself, like, smell pleasant, but you'll feel good.
Yeah, you'll feel clean. We talked about feeling grimy earlier and how we don't like that feeling.
Yeah, it's more comfy to be clean than it is to marinate in your own stench. Alright, and I think with that note, we can wrap up. This one's probably gonna be a bit short. Next month, the NEETwork is gonna slow down just a little bit. So far, we've been releasing 2 episodes a month, but in April, we're only gonna have 1 episode, and I'm gonna take this time to research and write for several episodes, And I think that little break will help us produce a better podcast overall, as well as get ahead of the release schedule, because it always kind of seems like we're just finishing up like the day before it's time to release, and I don't really like that feeling. I want to feel like I'm ahead. But thanks for listening all the way through to the end. If you like what you heard, perhaps you can support the podcast. Right now, the best thing you can do for us is to get the word out and help NEETwork grow its audience. If you're listening on YouTube, you can click the doobly-doos to help out the algorithm. It only takes a few moments, and every click helps. And if you want to take the NEETwork with you wherever you go, you can give our Podbean page a visit, and you can leave a comment and download the episode for free. And the NEETwork will be available on a wider variety of platforms in the near future. If you want to discuss your own ideas with other NEET-minded folk, take a look at the NEET Discord where all things NEET are discussed. And with that, I think it's time to say goodnight and stay comfy.
Stay comfy.